This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
It was about Christmas time, and Dad said he'd come over. I hadn't seen him much, and I think he was with someone else at the time. And so he'd come over and, give me Christmas presents or whatever it was. And so I remember that evening sitting on my mum's bed that had a window looking out on the street, just waiting for him to show up. You can imagine a kid being pretty excited for their dad to show up, and he didn't show up. And unfortunately, that wasn't very rare. So I was pretty upset, and I remember Mum coming in and consoling me. And you can imagine how she would have felt. Like, she would have been pretty angry and upset herself. And she put her arm around me and she said, "Dave, I'm sorry your earthly father isn't here, but I know that you have a heavenly Father that's promised to take care of you."
I'm Georgia, and welcome to Finding Hope, the podcast that finds the good in the midst of the bad. Each episode, we meet someone who's had a bit of a hard time but has found hope and healing along the way. And hopefully they inspire you to embrace the good in your world as well. Episode 24, Dave Hanbury. Dave Hanbury is a husband and father of 3. He's a pastor on Sydney's lower North Shore. Before that, he was the lead singer of a worship band that toured around America with Third Day. Before that, he was a university student who loved a hard conversation about faith. Before that, a rebellious teen searching for belonging. Before that, a 6-year-old kid who wished for nothing more than for his dad to show up on Christmas Day. There's been a lot of versions of Dave Hanbury throughout the years, and a lot of uncertainty. But the one constant in his life has been God. Let's meet Dave and hear exactly how God has provided for him at every turn, and how he's teaching others to trust in him as well.
Always hard to know what to say. I'm married to Pip. We've been married for 18 years, been together 23, goodness me. We have 3 awesome, wonderful, crazy kids, Josh, Bella and Micah. They are 11, 9 and 6. And we live on the North Shore and currently leading Harbourside Church in the beautiful suburb of Mossman.
How was your childhood?
Look, in many ways, good, secure and happy, and not maybe too different to lots of people. We grew up in the upper North Shore, so a lovely part of the world to grow up in. I guess for me, things changed pretty dramatically when my parents divorced. They split up when I was about 7 years old. And Dad really from then on wasn't around very much, little bits and pieces, but really not much at all. I guess I'd have to say that affected me pretty significantly. When you're young, and I've got 2 sons now, and my daughter as well, and you're kind of the hero. No, that's not going to last for my kids. And so I guess that was me. Looked up to my dad as a bit of a hero, and then for him to kind of leave pretty abruptly was pretty full on. Mum was great, single mum. Trying to raise 3 kids is not easy. And she's great, an incredible woman. But I guess I'd have to say, there's a part of you that's a part of me anyway, that was pretty broken.
But through the brokenness, just 6 months after his parents' divorce, was when Dave was first introduced to the concept that he might not be broken at all. And he definitely wasn't alone.
It was about Christmas time, and Dad said he'd come over. I hadn't seen him much, and I think he was with someone else at the time. And so he'd come over and, give me Christmas presents or whatever it was. And so I remember that evening sitting on my mum's bed that had a window looking out on the street, just waiting for him to show up. You can imagine a kid being pretty excited for their dad to show up, and he didn't show up. And unfortunately, that wasn't very rare. So I was pretty upset, and I remember Mum coming in and consoling me. And you can imagine how she would have felt. Like, she would have been pretty angry and upset herself. And she put her arm around me and she said, "Dave, I'm sorry your earthly father isn't here, but I know that you have a heavenly father that's promised to take care of you.
Wow.
And I really remember that. I think I was 7, and I remember it. I remember so many things about that moment. And I'd say that's where my spiritual journey really began, where I just had, and I believed, Mum. I just believed, and I believed that God was real and that he was out there, and that he promised to take care of me. And I knew this, even in my rebellious days. I'd go to bed most nights praying to God, believing him to be distant. I didn't know much about him, but at least caring and maybe looking out for me. Mm. And so I just always believed that. I kind of held on to that, that I had a father in heaven that cared.
Despite that, Dave struggled to find his way in the world as a kid and young teenager, until one school holidays changed everything.
I was your very typical classic rebellious young kid, just always in trouble, just kind of, I guess, craving that attention. And so that was me. We went to church as a family when we were pretty young, but when my parents split, my mum stopped going, and I think we kind of went fairly regularly, but I was super naughty. I mean, Mum says that I got expelled from Sunday school. I didn't even know if that was possible. And then I think they brought me home, and she's like, I gotta put up with Dave all the time. You can put up with him for 2 hours a week. And so send me back, which is awesome. And so, right through sort of to mid high school, late high school, I was really struggling. I was trying to find my place. And I went on a camp, a Christian camp, which I didn't really want to go on. I heard there were girls, so I thought, okay, this could be good. I went to an all-boys school, and my mum was just like, get out of the house for 2 weeks, during the summer. So I went, and I surprised myself by how much I loved it. They did Bible studies every morning, and I wasn't super keen on them, but I was quite blown away by how the leaders were. They weren't even that much older than me, I think, looking back. But they just loved me. All us kids, they were caring, and they wanted to hang out with us. And I was very blown away. I'd never really met people like that before, really. So that had a real lasting impression. And I thought, okay, my sister was a Christian. She's 2 years older than me. And, she was kind of the goody-goody, if you will, good at school. And I thought, well, all Christians are probably like that. And that wasn't me at all, more rebellious. And so then I met these leaders that were different. They kind of blew away my idea of what a Christian could be. And so I came home from that and was keen to discover more about Christianity.
It wasn't long before Dave started going along to church and learnt more about Jesus, who he was, exactly what he has done for us. And that was it. Dave was changed for good.
I was the kind of kid, I was in trouble. And so for me, the idea of grace hit me like a ton of bricks. It took me a while to kind of really understand, but it was life-changing. And I was never the same after understanding the gospel of grace, the good news of grace, that Jesus doesn't love us, because we're lovable, He doesn't accept us because of what we do. One of my favorite verses is Luke 19:10. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. I was lost, and Jesus came to this earth to seek out people, not who have it all together. It's not the healthy who need the doctor, it's the sick.
Dave had found his doctor, the healer of all. But it wasn't until university that his faith really came alive.
I think it was one of the first times for me that I started engaging with people, intelligent, smart, good to hang out with people that weren't Christians. Like, I didn't have many Christian friends at school, but this was an onslaught. And I actually loved it. I loved discovering the Christian faith can stand up under scrutiny, It doesn't fall over after a couple of difficult questions. And I just loved engaging with people with different ideas. you know. And I learned it was possible to disagree with someone and also have a beer with them.
Something that we don't seem to be too good at now. But as admirable as that all sounds, Dave doesn't look back with complete fondness as to how he always handled the situations. Did your love of kind of robust conversation, debate, talking about Christianity, do you think that kind of laid a solid foundation in which later you would become a pastor?
Probably. I mean, I'll be honest, I look back and cringe a little bit. Like I remember taking on lecturers and tutors, and I look back a bit and I was trying, I was keen, I was pretty new in the faith, right? But I look back and I'm a bit embarrassed. So and maybe that gentleness and respect thing, I hadn't cottoned onto that yet. But yeah, I love being able to talk about and discuss big ideas. I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to do, right? I think for me, I've always, wanted to do something that makes a difference. And I've always wanted to commit my life to something I feel is really important. Now, that can be anything for anyone, right? But for me, I just, from pretty early on, it most likely had something to do with my faith really directly.
However, Dave didn't always have his sights set on being a pastor. He's a talented musician, so he used his gifts to glorify God through a worship band called Revive, which actually started through a bit of a matchmaking exercise from his wife, Pippa.
It started with myself and another guy at church. My wife, girlfriend then, introduced us. Hey, you can sing, you can play guitar, you guys should get together. And we didn't think it was weird. We're like, yeah, sure, let's do that. It started with us just the first time we met, we started writing songs and they were pretty terrible. We wrote songs in his garage and, I was just learning how to play guitar. I always sang. I enjoyed singing from a pretty young age and he could play guitar and we just started writing these songs. And for some reason, people started to invite us to their youth group or churches to perform those songs. I don't know why. And really it just snowballed from there. We kept writing songs. We recorded them. We both loved music so much. And we had these artists that we looked up to. And we just thought, well, how do we do that? We were pretty keen on connecting our two loves, right? Our faith and our love for music together. It just made sense to write songs that spoke about our faith. And particularly in a way that encouraged people to think about the big questions in life. And so every time we would go and play somewhere, we'd always share our testimony. We'd always talk about our faith in that apologetic kind of way. And we loved it. We picked up more members. We were a 4-piece band and things just began to become more busy and more serious. Before we knew it, we'd quit our day jobs, which was always a marker of success for us. If we could do this, as a job, that would be amazing.
Call it talent, call it intercession, call it pure blind luck. But Dave and his band had made it. A chance meeting of a singer and guitarist to a successful band touring Australia. Revive were living the dream of so many wannabe musicians. And they showed no signs of stopping. After touring Australia for a few years, they then moved over to the States to try and make it long term. And make it they did. They ended up touring with Third Day, a major Christian band, and living the rock star life. Well, according to some people.
People say, you're a rock star? I'm like, in very, very small circles, as in maybe my house. Even my kids don't think I'm that cool. Yeah, it was amazing. Like, I think you pretty quickly realize, as I'm sure most people can get, that it's not as glamorous as it looks, right? So amazing to be able to perform for lots of people and write songs that other people are singing and all that kind of stuff. You pretty quickly realize it's a lot of airports, it's a lot of travel time, a lot of waiting around. But it was an amazing experience. I mean, the guys from Third Day, they really took us under their wing and we went on tour with them and yeah.
How did they get to know you?
Oh, we just totally conned them. The story goes that we opened for them here in Australia. That is 3 shows, and the story goes back a bit further. Another artist, a well-known American artist, was going was traveling to Australia, and we got the call saying, "Hey, would you guys like to open for them?" And we thought, "Oh, this is our big hit. This is a big shot, you know." And then we told lots of people, you know, and then within, I don't know, an hour, I can't remember, we got the call, "Oh, there's been a mix-up. They've double booked another opening act. It's not a goer anymore." And so we were gutted. And so the tour promoter, who was a lovely guy, said, "Look, I'm so sorry. The next band that comes, you can definitely open for them." And so that was Third Day. And so, you know, God's hand of provision through our lives, you know, is so true and clear. And so we did open for them just for a few shows in America and in Australia. And then we went to the States and did a bit of a trip, you know, trying to get signed, did 2 weeks, maybe 20 meetings with management companies, booking agencies, record labels. Pretty depressing. You know, it's hard, like to get an American label to sign an Aussie band is really hard. And so it was a bit depressing. We went and hung out with Third Day, and they have a record label. You know, they've been around for a while, wanted to give back to the industry, and we pretty quickly put our hopes on being one of those bands to be signed to them. And that's long story, but that's what happened. We spent a year back and forth to the States, writing songs, touring a little bit with them, and then they said, "Why don't you come on over and jump on tour with us? And we'll help you make a record and promote you," and all that kind of stuff. So it was a dream come true. Like, it really was.
Dave wasn't only living his dream, but he was seeing lives change through his music too.
Almost every day, if not every week, we'd be receiving emails from people, particularly of our record Blink, of how, you know, we wrote that album all about chasing what matters. You know, and the song Blink is all about Psalm 90 verse 12, "Teach me to number my days, that I might gain a heart of wisdom." You know, which is a strange thing to write a song about, but we felt really inspired that, hey, life is short, you know, and we want to make the most of what God gives us. There's wisdom in understanding that I am not infinite.
It happens in a blink, it happens in a flash, it happens in the time it took to look back. I try to hold on tight, but there's no stopping time. What is it I've done with my life? It happens in a blink, it happens in a blink, it happens in a blink, it happens in a blink.
Tour life wasn't all rock and roll. There were times when there was no other choice but to rely on God.
One night it's 3 a.m., middle of nowhere, the bus breaks down again. I mean, every band you'll ever meet has to have bus breaking down stories. Otherwise, they weren't in a band. Like, it's just the way it is. We all do, because you're doing so many miles and you're usually driving buses that aren't that great because you don't have any money. 3 a.m., middle of nowhere. We're talking tumbleweed, cornfields, middle of nowhere. We're at this gas station. We fill up. We get back in the bus. We just cannot get the gear into the, you can tell I'm obviously a car person, the gear into drive or whatever, you know, and it just wasn't working. And we just stuck. No one around, no attendant, you know, it was all automated. What are we going to do? There's no one there. We thought, you know what? We've got to put our faith into practice. We've just got to pray. And so we prayed, God, help us. We need you to deliver us because we're stuck. And then a car pulls up, starts filling up. And this is middle of the nowhere America, right? And then our guitarist at the time said, I'm going to go talk to him, you know? And we're like, okay, we'll come with you, you know? And he said, look, he told him the situation, we're broken down. Is there any way you can help us? He says, man, this must be your lucky night because I used to be a mechanic at the Ford factory.
Stop it.
And we drove a Ford bus. Seriously. So he gets under the bus, puts the bus in gear manually. I don't even know how we did it. And we got out of there. And that's just one story. So many stories. We've got another one where, again, our bus broke down and we had to leave the bus in Maine and get to Texas. If you know anything about America, you know that's not close. That's like Cairns to Adelaide kind of thing, is so far. So we had to get there the next week to play a runner show. So we left the bus there. It was seriously broken down. We kept getting calls from the mechanic. It was going to be 5, 7, 10,000 to repair. And so it's like we had no money. We just got there, right? We'd only been in the country for 6 months. And this, I feel terrible saying this, but we left our wives there as well with the bus because we had to fly and continue the shows. So we flew a friend up from Atlanta to kind of be with the girls. And,
goodness.
and as the mechanics worked on the bus, right, and it was just escalating in cost, we felt terrible leaving our wives there. What are we doing? And we just started to share our heart from the stage, which was always our way, just telling people, we're a little band from Australia and, this is who we are. And we'll be honest with you, we haven't had the best time. Our bus is broken down. We've left our wives. And so we did a run of 4 shows. And the first show we shared this. And then people would come up to us and, get an autograph and buy a CD or whatever. And they would just hand us fistfuls of cash.
What?
Like I'm talking checks, the Americans, I tell you what, they get a bad rap, but they are the most generous people I've ever met in my life. They are some of the most warm-hearted and generous people you'll ever meet. And seriously, so just fistfuls of cash. And we didn't have time to count or anything like that. We just sort of put it in the box and kept going to the next show. And we just share, and the same thing would happen. People just gave incredibly generously. Got to the end of that week, and I think it's pretty much within the dollar. People had given us the exact amount of money we needed to cover the expenses of the bus breakdown. So God just, I look throughout my life and I can absolutely 100% clearly see his hand of provision through so many ways.
Dave had trusted that God's hand would guide him through. He'd taken him from a broken 6-year-old missing his dad to a rebellious high schooler, a vibrant uni student, to a worship artist. From the suburbs of Sydney to cities all over America. So it only made sense that Dave would listen to God's voice when, after 4 years, it was time to come home.
We had our son over there in 2010, Josh, and we tried for about a year to make it work. And you can make it work. I've got plenty of friends still over there who are doing it. They bring nannies on the road, they homeschool, go for it. It's possible. But for us, after a year, we just the writing was on the wall, like this is a tough gig on your family, and a sacrifice people choose to make. But, I guess my background, I just did not feel good about being not very present as a dad. And so it was pretty clear to me. And by God's grace, the other remaining Australian in the band had a kid about the same time. The other guys had gone home, all good, but they just said, hey, not for us, we're going to head home. And we replaced them with Americans. The one remaining Australian had a kid about the same time. And we always prayed, if we want to keep going or if we want to end things, we just want to be on the same page. And God answered that prayer. It's not easy to make these decisions. It's a big decision, isn't it? Do we stay? Do we make a life here? Do we go home? And so, it took a while to make, and it was hard. I had mentors and people praying, and, it's not easy to build something, a career that you put your blood, sweat and tears into to walk away from that. And so, but we had a peace about it, and, we sought good counsel. And Pip, my wife, and I were on the same page. And we decided at the end of 4 years there, it was time to come home.
So Dave and his family returned to Sydney after 4 long years away. So much had changed. So much had been left behind. The question was, what now?
So we got home, and we just really felt like our place was in the church, building the church. So came home and decided to put the gifts that God had given me to use at a great church on the northern beaches of Sydney, helping their worship team. Loved it, running their team, building it. At the same time, I started studying and a theology degree at Bible College. And after a little while, took on the evening service, and we just loved the church we were part of, loved what God was doing there, part of growing that ministry significantly, and always loved music, still do, but thought, I wonder if we could be leading a church one day.
While Dave and his family lived in America, they attended a small church in downtown Atlanta. They loved the community and wondered if one day planting a church may be in their future. Turns out that one day was just around the corner.
Part of my degree is I did a subject on church planting. You can choose like a few practical ones. So I chose that and then loved it. Did some research on, planting a church maybe in this area that we're in now. I don't really know why I chose this area, but you had to do an assignment, which was, using all the knowledge you've garnered over this subject, plant a church, in an area. How would you use that? So I was all theory. So I just did a bit of research in the area and handed the assignment in. And the guy leading the course, weirdly enough, is the church planting director for the Baptist Association across New South Wales. Anyway, I was calling him about the assignment, and he said, "Do you really want to plant a church in that area?" I was like, weird question. I don't know. I'm just doing an assignment here, He said, "Look, if you're interested, let's grab a coffee." So it was very left field. So I grabbed a coffee with him, and he said, "Look, there's a Baptist church in the area where you have done an assignment on planting a church that's not doing great, that people have had their eye on for a little while to restart. Would you be interested in taking in a team?" And I mean, it was exciting but super scary. I hadn't done really much like that before. So I said, okay, I'll think about it. And I went home, and I remember turning the TV off, and I think my wife was heavily pregnant with our third child. And I just told her what the opportunity that, has come our way. And she's such a woman of faith. She just said, "I think this could be for us."
Oh.
I was expecting her to go, I don't want to move, and we're just about to have a third kid. She said, "I think this could be for us." It just felt like God was in it. And so we took a little while to pray and discern. We told a few friends, asked them to journey with us and pray. And it just felt like God kept, that classic opening the doors, just providing opportunities. And so we stepped into it. We just thought, all right, we're going to do this. And we started building a team. We started figuring out what kind of church it could be, and started inviting people to come and join us. We renovated a building that was in serious need of a lot of attention, and that was exciting. We're still sort of doing that, but we've come a long way. And we moved into the area and started meeting in our apartment. We had an apartment with a bit of a view over the area, which was pretty cool. We just started praying over the area that God would bring this church to life. I think being comfortable is a bit of an enemy of the church. I think we want to be content, but also a bit of a holy discontent. We want to be completely dependent on God. God, only you can do this. So starting a church is something that only God can do. Only He can bring people together. Only He can bring people from death to life. And so we had to be on our knees. And so we very much were, because we couldn't do it. We didn't know how to do it. I still don't even know how to do it. And so that's what we missed. And I think that's what God gave us in starting a church from scratch is we're just going to be dependent on God, and we're going to be praying.
And how have you guys grown in the from scratch in the last 4 years. I know obviously the last 2 haven't been easy for many people for many reasons. How's that growth period been?
Yeah, look, it's been an amazing journey. Just part of some of the things that I've absolutely loved is seeing people come to the church and use their gifts. The body of Christ coming together has been a beautiful thing. I've loved that. It's just been one of the greatest things. And I guess for us, we've always wanted to plant a church that was incredibly welcoming. When we were overseas, we what it's like to be new. And so we would visit churches and, we wouldn't have that experience where people were welcoming. People would stick to themselves and there were cliques and all that stuff. And so we were really convicted that we would plant a church where it was incredibly welcoming, and in a place, I think Mossman gets a bit of a bad rap, but in a place that can be pretty well known for fake, pretty well known for looking good, but really being a bit shallow. We want to be a place that was incredibly genuine and transparent. And so and a place, of course, where people can meet Jesus. And isn't that the best environment to explore faith? And so I feel like we've grown through that, having a culture that is open-hearted, curious, together, not having all the answers and not taking ourselves too seriously, but taking Jesus really seriously.
Well, Dave, you have had quite a journey in your life already, and you're still a young'un. So I'm sure there's plenty
Depends who you ask.
Plenty of many more fantastic experiences to come. But final question, how would you say all of the experiences, this journey that you've had so far in your life, how has it changed who you are?
I think we are a product of our journey, aren't we? Right? I mean, I am who I am because of my experiences. And not all of them have been easy, I've had, as we all have, significant things happen you wish maybe didn't, right? Of course. But I believe the hope of the gospel is God will use everything, good, bad, usually the difficult things, to grow us, to change our character, right? And so I'm grateful for every single thing, every experience I've had, because if I allow it, God can use it to draw me closer to Him, like that dependence we talked about before. And when I'm in that place, you can feel the joy of the Lord because you know that He's with you. You know that His hand of provision is with you. And it just builds our faith, doesn't it? It builds our hope. And the difficult things we go through, we know that there is an end. That's the hope of the gospel. It won't always be like this. But God will use whatever it is to change us, to make us into the people He wants us to be. And He's promised to be with us. And I have found that to be very, very true.
Thank you so much to Dave Hanbury for sharing his story. To find out more about Harbourside Church in Mossman, visit harbourside.org, and that information is in the show notes. I also highly recommend checking out Revive's music on YouTube. It's sure to put a smile on your face. Simply type in Revive Worship Band and you'll definitely find what you're looking for. I'm Georgia, and thank you for listening to this episode of Finding Hope. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can send me an email, a review, or share it with your friends. Stories are always better when they're shared, and you never know what someone can learn from another one's journey. And if you or someone you know has a story of hope to share and you think it'd make a great podcast episode, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the Finding Hope page at hopepodcasts.com.au. For now, I'll leave you with this verse. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Philippians 4, verses 6-7. Catch you next time.
This is a Hope 1032 production. Thanks for listening.